welcome back. Ian here, Darkstorm Rising. Really good to see you all back. I hope you've been enjoying the content so far. Still loving putting it out there for you. One of the things I've been doing recently is I've been starting to unpack my Leviathan box a bit more. And I'm very aware that I've got this sea of Termagants and Hormagaunts from the old models, and I wondered how well they're going to mix and match. So I thought I'd better get some painted up and just see how they do blend in together and whether or not you can get away with them being a homogeneous hive fleet. So I've already got some of the originals painted. I'm going to show you my painting style now. If you've seen my videos, you already know the colour scheme for Hive Fleet Morgoth, but I'll go through it with you so you can actually get a chance to have a look at it. And then at the end, we'll have a look how the two models compare and if you can get away with sneaking the two in together. So without further ado, over to the table. Hello, welcome over to the table. I've got 4 pre-prepared figures. I'm going to see if I can get all of those painted, hopefully in under 4 hours. The video definitely won't be that long. So what I'll do is I'll take you around the new Termagants. We'll show you how I get them painted, and then we'll compare them to the old ones and see if they can blend together on the tabletop and be a balanced and homogeneous army. So let's get cracked on. I've already prepared the colours on the palette. So we have Vallejo Game Dark Green. We have Vallejo Lime Green. We have Vallejo Yellow Green. Bone White. And a brief appearance from White. So I'm going to use a size 2 brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all actually, mix a tiny little bit of black in. The dark green is a very dark green, so you won't need much black just to really send it a darker colour. And what I'm going to do is, to start with, I'm going to touch all of the skin areas, leaving the recesses. I will come back to the recesses and touch them with a pale colour, probably rose pink, before I paint them properly black. So we're literally going to go around all of the model, just gently on these delicate areas, just dotting in the green. And on the spines of the back, quite a decent coverage, around about 80–90%, just avoiding the previous scale. Okay, I'll nip around the miniature, and then once I've got him all painted, I'll come back and show you. So I have now painted everything green, about 80–90% coverage on most areas. And what I've noticed is how narrow the miniature is, so it makes it very hard to get into the recesses underneath. Other things is there's a few extra details. We've got a bit more detailing on the rib cage. There's some detail, extra neck ridges that will need highlighting. But it's a nice model, very detailed, very tiny detailed parts. So I'll be dropping to a size 0 brush when I actually get to doing the main painting. So I'm going to get back to painting the rest of the guys green, and then I'll come back for the next colour. Okay, so I've been around the model. One thing I've noticed is the arm articulations are much more subtle now. They don't have the ridges in like previously, so that there won't be any need to paint those separately. The vents still need touching up, so I'm going to put some pale, let's have a look, old rose on those, ready for painting them red later, as well as the little eye on the bioweapon. The ammo magazine I intend to, and the little vent at the side here, I tend to paint in a more luminous green, and so I'll paint those white ready for receive in that colour, and I will then look at doing the next colour. So let's just quickly put on a little bit of Old Rose, and I'm going to drop to a size 0 brush because of the miniature and how tiny the parts are on it now. Okay. So the little eye. And these vents on the side here, now they're going to be needing a fairly dry brush, or else they'll fill up a bit too easily. So I've decided to just drop to 3 miniatures. Well, I didn't check the time actually. It's taken me about 15-20 minutes just to get that base coat on. So I need to get him out together. Okay. So I'll do that on all of the miniatures, all 3, and then we shall come back. So on a second look around the model, I did actually find the articulations. They're a bit more subtle on the new miniatures, but they are there. So I've been around and just highlighted those white. The next step is to go around the model. So I've gone over to a size 0 brush, and we're going to go into the dark green on its own now. And there we go. We're looking at painting probably maybe a third of each carapace section, just to push the green. I want to leave myself enough room to still work the highlights in, but I need the black to look quite black, and it's quite hard on these very tiny sections. And you may be wondering, why am I making things hard for myself and not going to slap job? And it is simply that I just enjoy the painting. On the spines, I'm going to do the top 2/3 of the spine in green and the front edge, and then I'll decide how much of that goes to highlight later. So I'm just going to work my way around the model, carry on doing this on all 3 guys, and then be back in a little while. I realised I did actually forget to talk about what I was doing with the skin sections. And the skin sections are literally around about 50% upper surface coverage in this green, the dark green, and then when you get to things like the tail, it's a bit bolder, and what we'll do is just clean a bit off the brush, and like all these ridges, you can just dust across these ridges, lovely, and then onto the top of the tail, get a bit more paint on your brush. And quite strong coverage on the top side and on the bottom side. And it's when we come back to do the highlights that we'll make the change. So I'll finish off, I'll go around the rest of the skin. I'll just show you quick these panels on the ribs and the throat. So So it's literally just a dot on each of those, highlight around about 2/3 of the chest bones, touch the upper surfaces of the neck, and like I say, I'll go around the rest of the model and I'll come back in a few moments when I've done all three. Okay, we've done 2 coats of very boring dark green now, but the next 3 coats are where the magic happens. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some of the dark green and we're going to take some of the lime green and mix them together to form as a mid-tone. Just make sure there's not any of the brightness of the lime green hiding in the colour. And then I'll go through a bit more thoroughly where placement is going to be, because it's starting to matter a little bit more now. So on the scales, we're looking at a very minimal coverage on the scales. And classically with Tyranids, just little stripes of paint. Now the first coat is a little bit washed out when it goes on. And on the spines, we're just going to roll the brush around the top, sort of, I don't know, 2/3. And maybe a little bit of penetration onto that front part of the spine there. And that's what we're going to continue doing all the way down. When it gets to the skin, we're really going to be, let me just show you that again because it went out of focus. So we're going to replicate this all the way down. So that is going to continue all the way down every spine. And then when we get to the skin, the upper surface areas, tops of the biceps, catch the line there, and it's important this although this doesn't look a very flashy layer, it's important this layer goes down, and we're doing the skin in long sinewy stripes to try and make it look, as we continue to paint these stripes, that we do have like musculature going on in the arm. And this colour itself doesn't stand out that much, but what it will do is it's going to give us a foundation. Rib cage, just a stripe down each little rib, just catching where the light would hit. Any upper surface area, just light little stripes in preparation for our next layer. And so catching the upper surface area of the muscle tone, as we said, trying to get it all in stripes, that we're going to carry on in all the way around the model. I'll do all 3 guys and then I'll come back. Right, well, we're starting to get a little bit nearer the colour we need to be. We've got all the shading in now. All it is highlights really. So we're going to go over to the lime green and put the first layer of highlights in. And let me grab the paintbrush. So straight to lime green, as we were saying. Get some water on the brush to make sure it's nice and smooth. Right, okay. And just get rid of some of the excess off the brush on my thumb. and we'll just stroke in. So there's a little hole there, we'll miss that, and we'll come to the side here and just exaggerate the hole. Oops, was close. And we'll do that for all of the little scales. Anywhere that looks like it's vaguely got a recess, we'll omit and exaggerate the shadow. And we'll do the tops of the spines. Just stroke the brush around them. Little hole there again, we'll miss that bit. Okay, so that's how we're going to finish with all the carapace sections, and then muscle. I'll do muscle and rib cage. So muscle, we're now starting to get more on the highlights. So we come up onto the top surface here. And one of the things with these new Termagants is how fine all the detailing is. It does make it actually very difficult to make sure your placement is accurate enough. I can understand why people do go slap chop, because it just gets all the definition done for you. And considering, you know, this is meant to be a hobby that's accessible to younger folk, I think the detail on the miniatures, yeah, that's great. But actually for younger kids painting these and just learning the hobby, these are getting quite tricky figures to paint, to be honest. Lots and lots of tiny detail. And yeah, you can roll a brush over the lot, but it's not going to really teach you, it's not really going to teach you a lot about painting. So yeah, tricky little models now. Highlight areas like his knuckles, down his tendons, and we'll put some striations onto tubing. And we will work our way around the model doing that. So I think you can start to see that's giving us a good effect, and with the final coat it will really start to pop, and then we're away. So I'll work that around the other guys, and then home front, or home stretch, sorry. Home front, that's a different thing altogether. Okay, so now we can start to see the colours coming out and making the figure come to life. Tiny little bits of tidying up to do here and there. And as the final coat, we've got to now apply the yellow green. the final highlight. So just as before, tiny bit on the brush, and this will really bring the figure out and make him pop, as they say. Okay. So just as before with the last layer, exactly the same placement, just a tiny little bit less, just to really brighten the colour up. Plenty of water on the brush to make sure that the paint flows nicely and you don't get any clumps, because this is such a delicate layer. Muscle, even higher prominence with the colour. Just touch on these highlights, even if it takes just a couple of layers. Again, avoiding all those little recesses, making those dark holes visible will make the rest of the paintwork even more punchy. The camera is actually literally now sat virtually in front of my face, so now and again that I've got a blind spot and I keep catching stuff on the table. I think I'm going to have to just move everything well out of arm's reach. And really high up now, sorry, really high up now on the accent of any muscle, so it's just in like corners and just high prominences. Okay, and you can start to see it's coming alive. So I'm going to carry on, work my way around the model, and I'll try and get the other two guys done as well, so that when I've done, I've got a tiny little squad that we can compare to the other Gribblies and see how well the guys blend together. So I'll carry on, catch you soon guys. So that's the final coat of the green on. We need to just tidy all the claws up and paint them black and put a little stripe of grey on them. I'll get the grey out in a second. The eye on the gun needs to go blood red, as do the articulating joints. A dot of white in the eye, and we need to paint the face. And then it's base him and job's a good one. So what we'll do first, I think, is the face. So for that, I'll get the paints ready and I'll be back in a second. Right, okay. So to paint the face, we're going to use brown sand. We're going to use pale sand. There we go. And as an intermediate colour between the two, we're going to contrast it with the Volupus pink to give it a tinge. So let's get some of that on the palette. Now I've had a little bit of a change of plan in that I'm running out of daylight and I'm not going to get all three finished. So I will do this guy, we'll have a look at him compared to the others, and then maybe in the next video I can show you a few more. You never know, I might have even got to four miniatures. Okay. Right, so we're going to use the contours of the figure to do this. So let's just get rid of a bit of excess, and just with green ends I'm going to use as much of the texture on this model, obviously avoiding the eye and the teeth. And I'm just trying to dip a little bit into the recesses. I don't want to heavily stain them, but I want something for the volupus to imprint on. So I'll do this side of the face. We'll just go down into the throat a little bit. We'll do this side of the face, and then I'll do the other side, and then we'll come back. So reasonably pleased with that. We get a little bit of the volupus. And we'll push the volupus into the recesses. And then I'm just going to have to leave that to dry for a few moments and then come back. Okay, so that hasn't taken long to dry at all. The pale sand is over here ready. And that's going to be really, really light, gentle strokes. We'll just get that in focus. There we go. And the model should literally do the work for us. We just gently stroke. Voila. And I've already done the other side, so we may as well just finish off. And this little fella is nearly done. And then it's just literally doing the basing. So again, and then what we will do is we'll get a little bit of bone white and just touch the teeth as well, and then highlight the teeth with white, a couple of dots in the eyes, and I think the only thing we've got left to do after that is the centerpiece on the weapon and the articulating joints, which take literally seconds. So we're doing well. That's that. A bit of white for the eye. Well, we've got a bit of white left actually. Getting a bit gloopy, but we've got a bit of white left. That's probably not a good sign for doing something as delicate as the eye. But what's life without a risk, eh? Let's give it a go. So we've got the tiniest dot on the eye. Just like that. Okay, for the final step now, we're going to use Green Stuff's World's True Blood. And I've spoken to you before about True Blood. Now, after about 15 minutes, if you put it on your wet palette, it tends to eat its way through. Not literally eat its way through, but it gets absorbed into the sponge below, and it stains and makes a right mess of your sponge. So I've popped a little bit into a container over here. We're going to do the articulations on the joints that we painted white earlier, and we're also going to just blob the gun weapon, and these articulations we will strike just to turn them a nice blood red, which is the way they look in my army. And not really seeing any more visible, so that will do us. Just the other side of the gun will pop. So now I'm going to do the basing. That will be Rhinoxide heavy staining on all of the lower surfaces. The rocks will go London Grey. These are all Vallejo colour. Oh, sorry, Rhinoxide is a Citadel miniature colour, and that will heavy saturate the ground. London Grey by Vallejo will do the rocks, and then I'll do Doombull Brown as a dusting over the top with the side of a brush, virtually dry, over the top to give it a bit of texture, and then Eldar Flesh. Both of those are Citadel colours, and they will give me a nice earthy tone to the base. And then the London Grey I will then do with light grey, and then white over the top, just very, very lightly dusted to give me the rocks. And then I'll get some Gamer's Grass and pop that on, and I'll bring you the miniature back in a second to see what you think. Okay, so here he is, all finished and complete, and he's out there with the rest of his family. Nobody's really noticed that he's different, and he'd certainly not go to the disco and be left on his own. Well, thank you for being dedicated and getting this far in the video. I'm really pleased with how the figure turned out actually. It's blended in really well with the rest of the miniatures. Just a shame I didn't get a few more so I could actually see a bit better of a comparison, but the day just ran away with me and I ran out of time. Really enjoying putting out the content. Now, when I hit 100 subscribers, I did have a little competition. Only 2 people either got that far in the video or could be bothered to make comments. And that was that I was going to give away the 2 Blood Angels I painted for that video. The 2 people who entered were James Chapman and the Johnsonator, so I literally only have to flip a coin to see who won. So I'll have the Johnsonator on the white side and James Chapman on the brown side. If you can private message me with your address, I'll send out the miniatures. Please do leave a comment to say what you thought of them. And here we go. That wasn't a flip. So white side was the Johnsonator. So could you please send me your address so I can get the figures out to you? And in the meantime, hell guys, are we painting minis yet? Hell yeah! And I'll catch you in the next one.